Hola, hola amigos del comité, ¿cómo están esta mañana? Yo muy emocionada. Hemos llegado a el final del bootcamp de este año, bueno, el primer bootcamp que tenemos. Maravilloso, 2 meses y medio de cada semana estar con ustedes, transmitiendo con excelentes fotógrafos, jueces, para darles retroalimentaciones y apoyo a todos ustedes para que esas fotos que ya son de por sí una locura, tengan esas últimas pinceladas para que se vayan con todo a la Copa Mundial de Fotografía. Bueno, primero haz clic, obviamente, que nuestros jueces puedan seleccionar las fotografías y mandarlas a la Copa Mundial. Así que muy contentos. En verdad ha sido un maratón y una experiencia muy bonita. Los que no han tenido esa oportunidad de ver las transmisiones, regrésense y si tienen, escúchenlas. La verdad es que hay tips y consejos muy buenos. Yo he aprendido muchísimo. Y el día de hoy, bueno, tenemos un súper invitado. Pero antes de presentárselos a todos, vayan mandándome saludos. Ya vi que Guillermo ya se conectó, a ver quién más anda por ahí. Y les cuento que Haz Clic con México 6, parte 2, porque esto se alargó muchísimo por lo de la pandemia. Tuvimos parte 1 y luego ahorita lo extendimos a esta segunda parte. Oficialmente cerraba el 31 de mayo, pero como ustedes lo pidieron, porque siempre se nos hace tarde, y la verdad, porque la vida ahorita como que se está empezando a mover, ya vi que todo el mundo se está empezando a ocupar con eventos, con diferentes proyectos, les estamos dando hasta el 10 de junio, que nos quedan 8 días para el cierre. Ya después de eso ya se acabó, ya no se puede inscribir nadie más, ya nada más estamos revisando fotos, que todas hayan cargado bien, que no nos falte la foto de nadie y demás, para mandárselas a nuestro panel de jueces, que va a ser quien va a evaluar las fotos. Las fotos no las evalúo yo, así que aunque los quiero y los adoro mucho, no voy a andar metiendo mi cuchara escogiendo sus fotos, así que tenemos expertos que nos van a ayudar a seleccionarlas. Y bueno, pues muchas gracias por los saludos, Shailo, Miguel. Aparte tenemos fotos de ustedes para la retroalimentación. Entonces, el día de hoy, último bootcamp, lo que va a ser específico en fotografía de boda. Lo quisimos hacer así por el invitado que tenemos hoy, que es reconocido como uno de los mejores fotógrafos de boda del mundo, uno de los más influyentes. Él marca la tendencia, la pauta de para dónde va la industria de boda. Él está muy metido en la WPPI. Es más, tuvo el título de Gran Master de la WPPI. Los fotógrafos de boda lo conocen muy bien, todo un personaje de Melbourne, Australia. Ahorita se encuentra en Las Vegas y está muy contento de estar con nosotros esta mañana. ¿Qué más les cuento? Cosas acerca de él que nadie sabe. Él es uno de los únicos 60 miembros de un prestigioso grupo de fotógrafos que se llama Camera Craftsmen of America. Es el grupo más antiguo, el club más antiguo de fotógrafos de Estados Unidos, y nada más puede ser miembro por invitación, y él es parte de este grupo. Pero aparte, algo divertido acerca de él: es papá de 2 perros hermosos y sale a nadar todas las mañanas con ellos. Además, casi no los perdemos en la industria fotográfica, porque él quería ser cantante, iba a ser un rockstar, pero decidió mejor volverse rockstar, pero de la fotografía. Entonces lo tenemos con nosotros. Así que ya que los veo que se están conectando todos, estamos con la pila muy puesta, tenemos unas fotos bellísimas que nada más vamos a ver cómo las podemos hacer que suban a nivel de medalla de oro. ¿Qué les parece? Y bueno, vamos a darle la bienvenida a este gran personaje. Por favor, Ghionis con nosotros.
Hey,
Hi,
how are you?
Very well, very well. I don't know how your Spanish is, but I was just introducing you and telling them how lucky we are that you were able to spare a little bit of your time to be with us this morning.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. I only understood a few words here and there, but it's good. Melissa will translate for me afterwards. No problem.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Um, yeah. And everybody, I mean, like I was telling you before we went online, I said, anybody that's a wedding photographer in Mexico knows who you are. You seem to kind of be the trendsetter for this industry. So, we appreciate that you're here to kind of help us guide our wedding photographers to get their images, even better.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. I always love sharing inspiration. It's all good.
Thank you. Thank you. Jerry nos dice que le gusta mucho estar con nosotros y poder compartir y inspirarlos a todos ustedes. Seguro que vamos a ser muy inspirados esta mañana. Jerry, well, before we jump into the feedbacks and start seeing the images, that's my favorite part of the show. But we wanted to start off with we have a lot of photographers that are now trying to make ends meet, and they're busy trying to get new clients and stuff, and they're like, Marian, you know what, I don't have time for competition. Why even bother? What's in it for me? What would you say to them?
Well, for me, I simply wouldn't be where I am today without competition. And I see it as a vehicle to reinvent myself year after year. Now, because we run the competition at WPPI, and we get paid a little bit for it too. Legally, I can't enter, and it breaks my heart because I've used WPPI among other competitions to see what I did the previous year. How do I push it? How do I reinvent myself? And it's hard to be original, but for me, I try to be original in either concept, execution, or technique. I mean, imagine if Djokovic or Nadal or Roger Federer played tennis and didn't play, in Wimbledon. How would you know where you stand? And it's not about ego. It's about reinventing yourself, giving yourself a benchmark to follow, and, really putting yourself out there. And your responsibility is to inspire others and to be inspired. So if no one entered, then where would the inspiration come from?
Love that. Okay, let me translate that into Spanish because I thought, wow, I had never heard it explained like that. Y le pregunto a Jerry, todos ustedes yo sé que ahorita están viendo cómo consiguen chamba, cómo le hacemos para generar un ingreso, para vivir bien de la foto. Y le digo a Jerry, bueno, ¿por qué deben de participar en competencias fotográficas? Esto, ¿de qué bien les hace? Y Jerry dice, es que yo no estaría donde estoy si no fuera por las competencias fotográficas. Eso es lo que me ha permitido reinventarme, seguir progresando, y nos habla de que en las competencias fotográficas tiene concepto, innovación, técnica, siempre se está tratando de mejorar. Y nos dice algo muy interesante, que hablando del tenis, imagínense que Roger Federer, Nadal, todos ellos no participaran en concursos, nada más jugaran en su casa, ¿no? Nunca sabrían cuál es su nivel a nivel mundial, no nada más es por el ego, sino es por darse cuenta y medirse y esforzarse para seguir siendo mejores, ¿no? Entonces, creo que es una muy buena manera de verlo. Nos habla también de que ahora está muy triste en el sentido de no poder participar en la WPPI como participante de fotografía, porque ahora él es el que está detrás de cámaras organizando el concurso. Es un poquito como yo con AskClick, que yo no puedo participar ni meter aquí mi cuchara. Entonces, tengo que encontrar otros lugares donde participar. Muy buena respuesta. A ver, vámonos con la siguiente pregunta. Y Jerry, I love that you just shared with us. So, when you started, when you were a new young photographer and new at all this, what would you wish that, Jerry from now, Jerry from the future could have told you, and that would have helped you grow a lot faster in, photographic competition?
Well, a few things. So first of all, I would tell my younger self, if the judges judge your prints very highly, it doesn't mean they're right. And if the judges judge your prints or albums, whatever, in a low score, doesn't mean they're wrong. So it's a unique combination of elements that give you a higher score. But probably more importantly, that what wins the hearts of your clients does not necessarily win the hearts of the judges. So sometimes I would enter into competition, and this print or album made me thousands of dollars, and therefore the judges will love it too. And it's personal to the couple, or there are things that maybe only the couple or the subject matter will know, but it's not necessarily clear to the judges. And probably even more important than that, I cared about just getting a good score. That was my main objective. I just want to feel good. I want to get a good score. And then after a while, when you win a couple of awards or a trophy or a place, if you don't win again, it's sort of like, well, I must be terrible now. So I quickly realized what the creative process is all about. And competition. It is not about the award. It is not about the trophy. It's about the creative process. So in other words, focus and have joy with the process, not necessarily the result. If you get a great result, fantastic, but focus on the process, not the result. It'll always be more fruitful. And, when we lose, as in we don't get the score that we want or we think we deserve, the fact is that, so-called failure, I believe, in anything in life is the foundation to success. So just realize that you look back at your previous entries and realize that was a stepping stone that got you further than what you did when you had a good score.
Fantastic. Oh, you've said a lot of amazing things. So let me try and translate all those to Spanish. Y chicos, le digo a Jerry que si pudiera viajar el Jerry de ahorita a platicar con el Jerry del pasado, ¿qué consejos le daría? Y acerca de competencias fotográficas. Y dice que el primero es que se den cuenta que no es lo mismo el juez que sus clientes, no necesariamente porque le fascinó a sus clientes, le va a encantar a un juez. Entonces hay que ver quién es su público. Y algo que creo que es muy importante es, no porque su foto la hayan calificado muy bien y se haya sacado excelentes calificaciones en el concurso, quiere decir que el juez está en lo correcto, pero tampoco si se las tronaron, les dijeron, no, tu foto no pasa, quiere decir que el juez está mal, ¿no? Entonces, siempre es eso de tomarlo con un poquito de sabiduría y no pensar que los jueces tienen todas las respuestas y siempre van a estar bien. Que se den cuenta de que el participar en concursos fotográficos es un proceso y lo importante de este proceso es la creatividad que van a meterle para lograr este tipo de imágenes, que se den cuenta que no es el resultado, no es la calificación lo que están buscando, sino el empujarse a tener mejores imágenes y disfrutar el proceso, como nos está diciendo Claudia exactamente. Y otra cosa muy, muy buena es esto de que el fracaso es la cimentación del éxito. Y eso también es muy, muy cierto. Nada más hay que saber aplicar ese fracaso, ¿no? Hay que saber tomar ese fracaso de una manera positiva para impulsarnos más adelante. Y bueno, ya casi vámonos a llegar a la parte emocionante de esta entrevista, pero tengo una pregunta más que sé que a todos ustedes les va a servir mucho y más con lo que nos pueda llegar a decir Jerry. Jerry, so before we jump in with the feedbacks, I'd like just to ask you one more question or ask you for some advice. And this is business advice. It's been a very rough season with the COVID. I know yourself, you suffered from it, and now you're bouncing back. Really, really well, getting very busy. Do you have any advice for us here in Mexico that we're just getting back on our feet?
Well, remember, history repeats itself. And if you remember, like 100 odd years ago when the influenza happened in the world, and that was after World War I. So the world suffered the at that time the biggest war in the history of the world. Then the influenza happened. They had no vaccine on the horizon. They didn't have internet. They couldn't communicate like we can across the globe very easily. And what happened there was it was a terrible time, as we had experienced in relative terms in our lifetime. And what happened is, you often hear the phrase the roaring 20s. What happened is people, those who survived, and people who kept onto their money, or they got money or whatever, they wanted to celebrate. Therefore, the roaring 20s. What's happening now is that we probably have suffered, God willing, the worst thing that's probably happened in our lifetime, as in globally, and we survived. Those who survived. And for photographers, it was a death blow. The fact is that events stopped. A lot of what we do stopped because it was considered non-essential. And the fact is that those who've been patient and have hung on, and some of us are hanging on by a thread, we have to remember that history repeats. People are going to want to celebrate. They realize what's most important. What's most important is time, health, family, friends, job fulfillment, all those things that we truly value. And we've been reminded that those are the most important things. So we're reconnecting in a very meaningful and beautiful way. So you can imagine that people want to celebrate that with a portrait, with an album. And I think that repopularizing print and the importance of print, and I think there's a mini renaissance happening now all over the globe when it comes to that. Now, what did I do when the pandemic happened? I got COVID bad. Short of taking my life, it took me 10 weeks to get over, and it was touch and go there for a while. But beyond that, the first thing I did was things I can control. So I don't spend time on things I can't control. I spend things on time that I can, and put my energy on what gives me value. So I did SEO for my website. I changed my website. I changed my price list. I got new samples. I developed a whole new body of work photographing performers here, because people know me here in Vegas actually more as a fashion portrait photographer than a wedding photographer. So I developed new skills. I had a long to-do list, and I just chipped away at that to-do list. So think of it like a photographer is like a warrior, and there's no water fight. Like, you're there and you've got no water fight. And are we just going to sit there and watch Netflix, for the whole year and a half, or are we going to prepare for battle? And that's setting up your castle, looking at your administrative workflow, your creative workflow. How do you become more profitable? And align yourself with businesses that already have your clientele. So coming up with those samples and, reinventing your social media or anything like that. But there's so many things that we can do now that is endless. I know that's long, and I know that you mentioned, don't worry, just say your answer and I will translate, but hopefully you've digested that.
Oh, I'm taking a lot of notes, but I actually am going to rewatch this. This is golden. Thank you so much. Y bueno, yo le dije a Jerry que no se preocupara, que yo iba a estar tomando notas para hacer la traducción, así que voy a platicarles un poquito de todo esto increíble que nos está compartiendo. Le digo que qué tips de negocios les puede dar a todos ustedes que estamos tratando de salir de esta pandemia y salir adelante. Dice que primero que se den cuenta que la historia se repite. Hace muchos años estuvo la influenza, justo terminando la Segunda Guerra Mundial, y fueron años muy, muy difíciles. Pero en ese tiempo, imagínense, fue la gran influenza, pero no había vacuna, ni siquiera esperanzas de que hubiera, no había internet, no había esto del Zoom, de manera de conectarse con la gente, y de todas maneras, terminando esta terrible situación, el mundo se recuperó, por eso se conoció como esta época como los Roaring Twenties, y fue esta época donde la gente que todavía tenía dinero, porque alguien se queda con dinero al final de todo esto, hay quienes no, pero los que sí, lo que quieren hacer con su dinero es gastárselo. quieren celebrar que sobrevivieron, que siguen vivos, que tienen ese dinero y se lo van a ir a gastar con las personas que les ofrecen estos servicios. Entonces, ahora vamos a pensar como fotógrafos. La verdad es que nos pegó muy, muy duro. Dice él que fue un death blow, que fue así como una última estocada de que no, ¿ahora qué hacemos? Pero lo que la gente se dio cuenta que es importante es la salud, la familia, los amigos y cómo van a querer celebrar con fotografías, con retratos, haciendo eventos, haciendo bodas, casándose, ¿no? Entonces, lo que hay que hacer es regresar la impresión, imprimir, porque eso es lo que le da el valor final a nuestras fotos. Yo se los he dicho miles de veces, si no está impresa, no es una fotografía, no se quede nada más en archivo digital, volverla a poner popular. Nos cuenta él que ahorita durante la pandemia, bueno, aparte que le afectó mucho su negocio de fotografía, o sea, casi se lleva el COVID su propia vida, estuvo muy, muy grave y se tomó 10 semanas en poderse recuperar, pero ya que lo logró, no se la pasó tumbado viendo Netflix. Él se puso a rehacer su página web, sus listas de precios, sus muestrarios para sus clientes, nuevos productos y demás. Nos cuenta que en Las Vegas él es conocido no realmente por fotógrafo de bodas, sino por fotógrafo de moda. Entonces, reinventar mucho esto, pero ponerse en contacto con los negocios y demás que tienen que ver con el tipo de gente con la que él quiere contratar, ¿no? Que quiere que lo contraten, mejor dicho, y hacer alianzas. Entonces, eso creo que es también muy importante. Y finalmente, nos dicen que tenemos que pensar que los fotógrafos somos guerreros. Entonces, ¿qué pasa con un guerrero cuando no hay guerra? ¿Qué se hace? ¿Se sienta y se espera que haya una guerra? No, se prepara para la guerra, entrena, piensa en su alianza, en su estrategia, sus alianzas, su castillo lo prepara, además. Entonces, que pensemos de esa manera. Cuando no hay chamba, hay que ponernos a preparar. Creo que excelentísimas respuestas, las 3 de Jerry, y le dije que voy a volver a ver la entrevista ya cuando esté tranquila y no pensando que tengo que traducir, porque me acaba de decir cosas que nunca había escuchado y que definitivamente voy a incorporar personalmente. Así que espero que les hayan servido a todos. Gracias por los saludos. Ayúdenos a compartir para que todo el mundo vea esta gran entrevista con Jerry. Pero bueno, Jerry, well, thank you so much for all that. I mean, it was bucketfuls of amazing information. And if you're ready, we'll go on to the feedbacks.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get on with it. Josué, nos pones nuestra primera fotografía en pantalla. Vamos a iniciar con la retroalimentación. Recuerden que esto es el bootcamp. Lo que queremos es subir niveles. Entonces, no vamos a apapachar demasiado. Vamos a ver cómo logramos en que estas fotos lleguen por esas medallas. All right, Jerry. Well, here's our first one from Miguel Ángel. He's around saying, he's been saying hello this morning.
Very good. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. First of all, I know it's very difficult to wear your heart on your sleeve and share your photographs publicly. So just know that whatever feedback that I get, it's only my opinion, and it doesn't make me right the way the judges understand it. All I'm doing is I'm giving you my perspective based upon 27 years of photographing professionally and 20 years of teaching. And for me, when I talk about rules, they're not so much rules because that almost implies they can't be broken. I call them common denominators. After this many years of shooting and teaching, I believe this will work arguably maybe a little bit better because of these reasons. But you simply break the rules when it looks good, not out of laziness. That's my precursor to everything. So I don't know if you want to translate that first.
Definitely. Y antes que iniciar, Jerry quiere decirles a todos ustedes que muchas gracias a los fotógrafos que nos compartieron sus fotos para la retroalimentación, que sabe que es difícil ponerse ahora sí que a exhibirse en cierta manera, que sus fotos se les critiquen en público, que los comentarios que él nos va a dar están basados en los 27 años que tiene como experiencia como fotógrafo y los 20 que tiene dando cursos, y que él no les va a decir que son reglas, porque él así no las considera. Él cree que son comunes denominadores que hacen una foto exitosa, pero también quiere que sepan que pueden ser rotas estas reglas o denominadores siempre y cuando tengan una razón, porque se van a ver bien. No se pueden romper nada más porque te dio flojera. Entonces creo que son muy, muy buenos puntos. Y bueno, Miguel, vamos a ver qué nos dice de tu foto. All right, Jerry.
All right, very good. So first of all, I'm not sure if this has been done in post-production or not. If it was done in camera, amazing timing. If it was done in post, I think that you've done a great job in blending it in. So I have a feeling it was in post-production, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just looking at what's in front of me. I love the three colors here, the three elements. You've got the foreground, the base, the foundation, and of course you've got the water, and then you've got the blue. It's funny because although it's obviously sand and water, and then you've got the perspective of the water beyond the crash of the wave, I think it's very clever because it almost looks like you're dissecting the earth, and then then the water, and of course the horizon, which I think is very clever. I feel with what she's doing, I like it. It's very dramatic. I think, though, that if that was to be, when I say realistic, if that was to be, like you're basically trying to say that she's splashing in the waves and everything like that, her expression is very passive. I think, I don't really feel like she's surrendering. Like it's almost like I'm surrendering to the earth. I think she's a bride. She's got the flowers. It's fun. I would have much preferred to see a fun expression. She's laughing, or she's laughing at herself, or something like that. So for me, it's almost like two different photographs. The expression seems a little bit passive, a little bit more. I feel like I want her laughing or cracking up and having some fun. The hands don't bother me. Traditionally, you don't want to see this, like the underside of the wrist area. And sort of, open. I quite like, though, that the arms are slightly bent, but for me, it's raw. It's fun, but I'm not getting that from the expression. So that's my feedback of that image.
Okay, perfect. Miguel, de entrada una foto muy, muy interesante, bien lograda. Dice Jerry que algo le dice que es una fotocomposición, pero que está tan bien hecha que se siente que fue tomada de un solo clic. Así que sé que andas por ahí, si nos puedes sacar de la duda, te lo agradecería. Pero nos gusta, le gusta a Jerry la profundidad de la arena, las olas, la novia, hasta atrás el mar azul. Muy bonito, muy bien logrado, y nuevamente sus manos, bien la iluminación. La única cosa que aquí es donde no embona muy bien es la expresión de la novia. Se ve muy tranquila, muy, muy relajada. Si piensas que le está dando, llegando una marejada de este tamaño, y se está dejando ir con la ola, debería tal vez de tener una expresión más divertida, no tan serena. Sí, es fotocomposición. Entonces, he's telling us that he did put that together. It's a photo composition.
Right. So just I think it's extremely well done. I think if you're trying to do a composite, sometimes, like in terms of the way the dress blends into the water, I think it's done very well. I think what gives it away is the fact that you would obviously see some kind of water or shadowing of the water on her body. And especially for competition, judges will look at things like that and go a little bit closer. In other words, either it's an unashamed composite, as in you obviously know it's done, but it's done extremely well, or then you've got ones like this that it's trying to disguise the fact that it could be her. So, like I said, and then some people will look at the digital component of whether it's a composite. For me, she's too passive in that environment to that be real. Does that make sense? So, but I think it's very well done. It's blended in nicely. But yeah, more droplets on the arms or something, more shadowing on there as well. And if you had a shot of the bride with maybe a bit more over-the-top expression, I think that would work effectively. But it certainly has impact. As soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, wow, that's really fun. So very good.
Fantastic. Y Miguel, bien logrado, tiene ese impacto que tanto buscamos. Es nada más que logremos una pose de la novia, que seguro has de tener varias, tienes una con una expresión más divertida, más que vaya con el ambiente, y en general muy bien logrado. Tal vez le hace falta que ella tenga un poquito de agua que le esté salpicando, pero muy bien hecho, tiene ese impacto. Vámonos con la que sigue. Y esta es de Jofe. Hola, Jofe, si andas por ahí, mándanos saludos. Ah, ya te vi que andas ahí en Mérida. Saludos, Jofe.
Okay, is that my cue?
Yes. Yes. Sorry, Jerry.
No worries. Okay. First of all, I like the black and white. I think the contrast and the tone is really, really beautiful. I love the way we've posed the bride. Traditionally, like we said, generally speaking, I don't know if you can cut to my camera for a moment, but
¿podemos ver a Jerry también, Josué? Okay, there we go.
So generally speaking, when it comes to the female form, especially hands, we either want to see this bit or we want to see this bit, and then usually bent. Now, obviously, with the nature of this photograph, the hands behind the back, that almost makes it impossible. But what you could do is almost do this, where so now it's a little bit softer and it forms a sort of a point, and it's a little bit softer. So that could be the way. That way is probably a bit masculine for her, but because she's gorgeous and got a beautiful figure, she gets away with it. Maybe translate that first and then I'll critique it again.
Yeah. Y bueno, nos dice, hablando de la novia, y un comentario muy importante de las manos, que ya lo hemos escuchado varias veces, las manos son el segundo rostro de nuestros personajes y los jueces se fijan mucho en ellas. La novia con sus manos atrás, lo ideal para las mujeres es que se vea la parte de la orilla de la mano, justo como ahorita nos mostró Jerry, y aquí en esta pose que está ella, está con las manos detrás de su espalda. Entonces es muy difícil que se note como se vea correctamente las manos. Entonces que ella, perdón, es que mi perro se volvió loco, no sé si lo estén escuchando, pero bueno, en ella se ve bien por el hecho de que tiene un gran cuerpo y una gran figura, entonces aguanta, pero sugiere más una pose con las manos, como nos mostró hace un momento Jerry, con las manos entrelazadas. Okay.
All right, let's continue with the critique. Okay, let's go full screen again if we can.
Ok, Josué, ¿nos muestras la foto en cámara completa? Ahí estamos.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so again, I love the color palette, as in the tones of the image. I think it's really beautiful. I also like the fact that you've got their head and shoulders above the environment. I think many of us tend to get that wrong, where we get the horizon chopping the heads and necks and things like that, which is a problem. I like the way you've posed her. Again, I like the little gap between her arm and her body. If you can see on the right-hand side, I see the evidence of another light coming through. So you've got the sun behind her, and then you've got the flash on the other, which, to be honest, you've disguised it well. I see a shadow of her right arm on her body, but that gives her, because you don't have a gap between the arm and the body, I think it works, that little shadow, because it sort of cuts into her, and it even gives her some more shape. Now, it's important. So for me, she actually feels like she's standing quite straight. And it's important with the female form that you push the hip one way or the other, as in either left or right, putting all her body weight on her left leg or all her body weight on the right leg. In this case, because she's looking off to the right, my suggestion would be to push the hip a little bit more to the left. It just adds a bit more shape. The fact that we have a gap between her chin and her shoulder is very good, and that works well too. Now, what I'm not, I guess something doesn't feel right to me. I think this would be a great shot of the bride on her own. The groom there waiting, it almost makes me feel, is this a reveal, like where the bride and the groom see each other for the first time? I don't get that sense because I don't really get that emotion from him, and she would be walking up to him. She wouldn't be passively standing straight. So if this is not a reveal, then it's like an editorial shot. We're not trying to be romantic. We're just taking a portrait of the bride and the groom, and they're standing there quite passively. I feel like she has a little bit of finesse. When a man holds his hands over his crotch, it suggests that he's either uncomfortable or bored. And I do get the sense that there's no energy in him. So I feel like, if we basically had the bride stand right there, because you have the leading lines of the ground, I think this would be an effective shot of her on her own. I think that the lack of emotion between them, and again, even though it's an editorial shot, I'm not quite understanding it. Where are they? They're looking at the same thing, but where are they looking? And I'm all for mystery, but there's too much negative space for me to almost feel like there's something else that they're looking at. Also, if we look closely, you look at the Photoshop and the glow around his legs, and you sort of see the burning and dodging that's been done, and you see evidence of that. If I did not see that glow around his legs, especially the front of his legs, then your post-production would have been disguised. So this certainly has drama to it. It's perfect for the album. For competition, the judges will look at the things that I mentioned, and it'd be challenging to sort of get this up on a higher level.
Okay, fantastic. Let me see if I remember all that. Jofe, es una fotografía muy interesante. Ya hablamos de las manos y me quiero ir para contraste antes de mencionar lo demás que dijo Jerry, con las manos del novio. Nos dice que la pose de las manos detrás de ella son un poco más masculinas, que lo aguanta ella por su figura, pero las poses de las manos del novio, dice que de entrada la manera que las tiene posicionadas es una manera más femenina, pero aparte que cuando los hombres se ponen las manos enfrente de ellos de esta manera, demuestran que o están aburridos o están incómodos, demás. Entonces, hay que cuidar mucho esto. Nos habla de ella, de la iluminación, que está muy bien lograda, que es más, normalmente lo que dicen que es ideal es que se vea una separación entre los brazos y la cintura para hacer esta forma. Del lado izquierdo lo lograste muy bien, del lado derecho no, pero con la iluminación lograste que se vea una sombra justo en su codo del lado derecho sobre el vestido. Entonces, esto ayuda a dar esa separación y lo lograste bien. Ahora, dice que hay elementos ahí como que no siente qué estás tratando de contar, que dice que tal vez sea esa primera vez que el novio está viendo a la novia y por eso no se están viendo, no hay esa conexión, pero dice que el novio no lo muestra en la expresión, nuevamente dice que se ve como un poco aburrido, entonces que tal vez es una foto editorial que podría servir muy bien para el álbum, para complementar, pero para competencia tal vez no tenga ese gran impacto que se está buscando. También nos habla de la edición antes de cambiar de foto. En particular se ve ahí un halo alrededor de él, enfrente de su rodilla. Se nota ahí un halo de donde estuviste como que tratando de igualar los tonos. Entonces hay que cuidar mucho esos detallitos. Los jueces no se tienen como radar y se van a eso. Entonces hay que cuidarlo. Creo que es una foto muy, muy bella. Tiene esos par de detallitos que tal vez le impedirían irse ese paso adicional. Es una foto como más editorial como para el álbum de los novios. Esos son los comentarios de Jerry. All right. Y nos vamos con esta de Alejandro Gutiérrez. Jerry, this is our next one.
I absolutely love this photograph. It gives me a lot of joy. It's not something that we see often. Whether this was done while driving or whether it was actually done stationary, but with post-production we added movement, I'm not too sure. Either way, it's actually done exceptionally well. So high degree of difficulty doing it in camera whilst driving, and high degree of difficulty to actually make it look real. I love this. The expression is beautiful. You see a hint of the groom. The light is actually quite nice on her face. The reflection in the foreground just gives you that reality. So it's almost like the imperfection of that reflection and then covering a little bit of his face and the bride is really good. I wouldn't touch this image. I love it the way it is. I think the blue is very strong and very dynamic. It makes me happy. I think this is it's a really fun, dynamic, strong movement photograph. So it's really well done.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Okay. Well, si Josué nos pones en cámara, Alejandro Churro, a Jerry le encanta esta foto, dice que no puede entender si la hiciste, que ibas manejando a la par o si fue sin que ellos se movieran y tú moviste la cámara, pero la manera que lo hiciste, lo lograste perfecto. Le encanta la expresión de los novios, la iluminación, la cara de ella, su rostro, se ve un poco del novio, las luces, todo. Dice que no tiene nada que criticarle, que la dejaría tal y como es. Muchas felicidades, bien lograda. Fantastic. And we go on to the next one.
Okay, very good. So certainly very dynamic with the color and the strong, the sort of the strong pose, which I think is very good. Typically, my suggestion when it comes to lighting, especially the female form, is to turn the body away from the light source and turn the face back in. In this case, we have two lights. We have one on the background, so it's backlighting her and him, and then one on the front. Now, because she's wearing a red dress, it's forgiving in the sense that if it was white, it would make her look bigger and fuller. Now, because she's turning her face, to her left shoulder, you can sort of see how the lighting isn't as flattering on her face. So just remember, with the female form, turn the body away from the light source until you get a shadow on the cleavage, the middle of the dress, and then turn the face. So maybe if you can come back to the camera of me for a second.
Okay, ¿nos podemos ver, Josué? ¿Podemos ver a Jerry?
Okay, so it's hard to show you because I'm obviously close up, but my light source, which is very soft, is there. I turn the body away from the light source until we get a shadow on the cleavage and the middle of the dress. So really, and then the chin goes to the outer shoulder. That's for a nice feminine touch. And then the eyes can go back in the camera. Now I turn the face until I just see light in both eye sockets. And then I have a shadow on this side, which gives me depth and dimension and shape and form. And like I said, I do the same. Maybe translate that first and then we'll go back to the image.
Definitely. Y bueno, vimos ahorita la pose que estaba haciendo Jerry. Está hablando de la chica que dice que en general una de las reglas que hay es que a la mujer no se le ilumina de frente. La luz, como él nos estaba indicando, le debe de llegar desde la parte de atrás y se tuerce su cuerpo de ella al punto de que se le ilumina la mitad del frente, del busto, y luego el rostro se voltea para el otro lado, un poquito como nos estaba demostrando Jerry. Eso hace que haya más movimiento y que la iluminación se vea más agradable en la mujer y le haga un cuerpo más estético con iluminación. Dice que en esta foto aguanta el que tenga la iluminación de frente por el vestido rojo que tiene tan entallado y que no le afecta tanto, que si hubiera sido un vestido blanco la haría ver muy ancha. pero lo que sí nos dice es que si podemos ver su cara, ese golpe de luz tan de frente, con la sombra tan pronunciada, si no es tan agradable. Entonces, sí hay que tratar de tener esa regla en mente para que se vea más estética la mujer y en particular las novias. ¿Ok?
All right, let's talk about some other stuff here too.
All right. Y bueno, vamos a hablar de más detalles de esta foto. Ready when you are.
Okay, so again, the lighting looks good on her. I think it'd be more effective if the light was coming from the right-hand side and then therefore causing that shadow on her cleavage, causing that shadow on the left-hand side of her face, or camera left, and that would have been good. Now, here's the other problem. Because the groom is in the background and covered by the dress, she looks like a giant and he looks tiny. And because we can't see the lower part of his body, he's dwarfed even more, so that it looks a little bit weird. The combination of the backlight is good. The movement of the dress is fun. Posing her leg is very effective. We take advantage of that particular dress. Her left arm would have been nice if we had a bend of the elbow. I think that would have been a little bit nicer, because we see even a bigger space between her elbow and her body, therefore giving her shape. And for me, this image is not quite centered, not quite negative space. I feel like we could probably crop a lot of the left-hand side of the image. So this would probably benefit from either a square or a 5x4 crop. But remember, just the proportion of the guy to the girl, it almost emasculates him. And I'm all for women looking powerful and strong, but sometimes it can look masculine for a woman to be front and center and big and strong, because we're also shooting at a low camera angle. And then we have the proportion of the guy looking small. It could be quite challenging. So the concept, I think, is very good. Just adjustment of lighting, bringing the groom a little bit closer, and I think that would have been a bit more effective.
Fantastic. Y bueno, Javier, vamos a ver los últimos detalles. Nos comenta que bueno, ya hablamos de la chica, de la novia, que se hubiera visto mejor si la luz le pegara del lado derecho y no del lado izquierdo. El novio, estando detrás de ella, tapado la mitad de su cuerpo por el vestido y con el ángulo en que estás tomando la foto, se ve enanito, se ve chiquitito. Ella se ve mucho más grande, más poderosa, y él se ve, pues ahora sí que ni pinta ahí, ¿no? Entonces, Jerry dice que le gusta ver que a las mujeres se vean fuertes y demás, pero que aquí tal vez ya es demasiado esta discrepancia entre ambos. Dice que la pose de su pierna muy bien lograda, su mano, su mano que está contra la pared, su brazo que está más cerca del novio, le hubiera quedado perfecto un pequeño doblez en el codo para que tuviéramos un pequeño ángulo y más movimiento ahí. Y en cuestión de la iluminación por detrás, la que llega por atrás, bien lograda. Y último detalle es el encuadre. Cree que no se siente ni que está centrada ni que está de lado, que él te sugeriría intentar recortar un poquito, eliminar del lado izquierdo, que no contribuya a la imagen, y ya sea pensar en una foto en cuadrado o en una proporción de 5x4. Entonces, que trates de intentar eso. Y bueno, hay cosas que nada más volviendo a tomarlo, pero ya tener en mente esas nociones, creo que te van a ayudar muchísimo, y a todos nosotros. Fantastic. Let's go on to our next one.
Okay, so just so people know that when I'm turning my face to the left, I'm looking at the image that's coming. So just I'm not answering emails or anything like that. So just know.
You're multitasking.
Yes.
Perfect. Dice Jerry que cuando no nos está viendo, está volteando a ver al otro lado, que está viendo la pantalla, está viendo la foto, porque tiene la cámara para un ángulo y la computadora en el otro. Okay, Jerry, ready.
Okay, very good. Now, first of all, very strong dynamic image here. I'm really enjoying it. There's just it's funny because when I see a very beautiful image that is very strong, I sort of think of it like you've passed the test, and now I'm just greedy. I want more marks, so to speak. And here's how I think you could get them with this image. First of all, I need more breathing space underneath. There's not enough breathing space underneath their feet. So it's sort of almost visually suffocating. So that's an important one. The fact that you've got the head and shoulders above the environment, the horizon, is very important. It becomes a portrait of them. When you look at the fence, you know, the railings there of the pier, I'd like it to be skewed. So think of it like you grab you select all, edit, transform, skew, and then you can straighten up those lines on the right-hand side and a little bit on the left. Now, the birds are amazing. The fact that you've got two birds, not only are they, that you've got the birds that are a couple, you've got the couple that are a couple, but it also forms a beautiful triangle of the three important elements in this picture, beyond the many triangles in here. And of course, we know that they're very pleasing to the eye. And then of course, harmony, there's harmony in repetition. Now, the pose is very good, but it can even be more effective. So the fact that he's bending his leg is very important. Most people forget to bend the leg of the guy. She's bending her leg, but you would say, whose leg is sexier? Of course, the fact that her leg would be better. So when you think of the legs embracing, mirroring what the faces are doing, her knee needs to be beyond his. So she stands a little bit closer and her knee beyond his. Also, she's got exposed legs and she's got the dress that's quite long. It would be nice if that dress was beyond her foot so that you could see that beautiful calf going right to the ankle and to the shoe. Now, when it comes to kissing shots, one would say that a kissing shot is a feminine sensibility. It's more beautiful when you see more of the girl. It's a girl. It's a feminine thing, you would say. Now, when they're about to kiss like that, or if they were actually kissing, you would say it would be nicer if we saw the bride's face. So when I was younger, I would just say, hey, guys, go for a kiss, and however they kiss, good luck. Now I'm very conscious of getting the bride's nose on the outside of the kiss. So, and also to see it a bit more effectively, I would turn their bodies and twist their bodies a little bit. So I'm just shooting slightly over his shoulder. Then I get the upper bodies to lean towards the camera, so I'm more engaged in the kiss. The fact that we've got her right hand over the shoulder is important, but try to bring her right hand more over her left wrist, and then we don't get that amputation, or at least two amputations. So although this is very beautiful, like those few things could make a huge difference. Also, because the sun is coming from that other side, if we did this exact photograph but flipped it, and then you had the bride's nose on the outside, and then you turn her face until that you get that little kiss of light to rim her face. All those things would have made this shot that's already beautiful even shine brighter.
Okay. Fantastic.
Sorry, that was a long one.
Yes, I was trying to get a lot of notes here, and actually, just before I start with the translation, Claudia is asking if there is a way of finding out more information, because these are a lot of wonderful tips and suggestions you're giving about, like you said before, just go for the kiss, and now you're kind of more conscious about all these little details. I know you do a lot of courses, and so that they could follow you later on to kind of learn all these rules, or like you said, common denominators, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few ways that we can do it. Basically, like at the moment, if you go to Jerry Ghionis, spelt like the way my name is, jerryghionis.info. If you can't remember, go to my Instagram and click on my link in my bio. on the very top, you'll see some free downloads, some free tutorials. And a lot of these tips and tricks will be are in there, and it's free. You can enjoy it. If you enjoy it, and then, of course, if you want to invest into a membership or specific products, those products will lead you to other things that I offer as well. But as a free giveaway, and a lot of people are suffering at the moment financially, just jump on there, download all the free downloads and enjoy them. You may not understand English perfectly, but because I pose very visually, I think that you'll get a lot of benefit out of it.
Fantastic. Y Ernesto ya nos puso aquí, Josué ya nos están poniendo en el chat las ligas que nos está comentando Jerry, porque Claudia hizo una muy buena pregunta. Está dándonos información muy específica acerca de fotografía de boda que no sabíamos o que a veces no pensamos, como dice él antes, él le decía a los novios, dense un beso y a ver cómo caía, y ahora no. Hablando de esta foto de Gina, nos dice que tenemos pues una foto maravillosa, espectacular, con súper bien lograda, y que ahorita ya los comentarios que le hizo a Gina, que son un poquito que se está engolosinando porque quiere que sea todavía más perfecta. Así que nos está dando puntos muy, muy interesantes. Para empezar, de las rejas de este camino donde están, que Gina te sugiere que las endereces para que no estén curviadas. Y bueno, ya ahorita detalles de pose que nos habló, que obviamente no puedes cambiar en esta fotografía, es el novio tiene la rodilla un poco doblada, que muy bien logrado esto, que sí, a veces se nos olvida, siempre pensamos mucho en la mujer, en que doble las rodillas para crear esta pose femenina, pero también es importante que el novio doble un poco las rodillas para que no esté parado así como soldadito, ¿no? Entonces hay que recordarles a ellos, pero para que fuese todavía mejor la foto, lo ideal sería que la rodilla de ella fuera la que está enfrente de la rodilla de él, y que el vestido tal vez se lo hubiéramos retirado un poco más para que le viéramos toda la pierna hasta el tobillo, y eso hubiera hecho todavía mejor composición. Nos habló un poco acerca del beso, que como les decía, antes decía, dale un beso y a ver cómo caía, pero ahora no, ahora los guía un poco acerca de que el beso es algo femenino, y que para que se vea más hermoso tiene que ver más la cara de la mujer, la pose de la nariz, y entonces es como que se vea por fuera y se vea más de su rostro. Y muy buen tip. Otro detalle que nos dijo muy al principio, estoy viendo mis notas porque no le quiero cortar la inspiración de todo lo que nos está diciendo, y prefiero tomar notas y estarles comentando a todos ustedes, pero en los pies, en el muelle, tal vez, Gina, valdría la pena bajarle un poquito, darle un poquito más de espacio, porque se ve que están casi en el final de la foto. Entonces, darle un poquito más de muelle al principio, eso lo podrías lograr muy bien en postproducción. Ese detalle sí. Le encanta el detalle de las aves, estos triángulos que hay que también recordar que por todos lados en esta foto tenemos triángulos. Eso es excelente, Gina, muy, muy, muy bien logrado. Entonces, grandiosa foto. Felicidades. Los detalles, como dice él, ya nada más es para engolosinarse y que quede todavía más perfecta y darnos a todos información que a veces no teníamos contemplada. Perfecto. Nos vamos con esta foto de Eliud.
Okay. Very, very beautiful. I love the repeating lights. So, you've got the lights in the top. It almost makes me feel like they're lanterns. I don't know if they are, but it sort of gives me the impression that it is. So this is sort of like an unashamed fairy tale in a sense that I'm not confident that this is done in camera. For competition, people will look at shots like this and probably know that it wasn't done in camera, because if they were lanterns, all the guests wouldn't be doing nothing on their table. So it sort of gives it away, the fact that, because if there was this incredible spectacle happening in the sky, I think people would be looking, they'd be pointing, they'd be celebrating what was happening. and the couple arguably would also be looking that way as well. Taking that away, there is an element of fantasy here, in the sense that you've got the bistro lights, you've got the lights on the ground, or the dots, again, however they were created, and then you've got the sky as well. So this is sort of like, you know what, probably not real, but it is beautiful for the album. I don't think it would do well in competition because there's a contradiction in the expressions. The couple, the backlit flash we've all done before, and I think this is done quite well. Where you can get a bit more engagement is if we dip the bride down a little bit, not dramatically, just a little bit, so there's a little bit more energy into the shot. And then arguably their faces, their foreheads, not so much even touch, but they go down a little bit. That just adds to that little bit more emotion. But again, for me, because they're not engaged, the guests around, there is that contradiction. But is it pretty? Is it beautiful? Is it great for an enlargement? Is it great for the album? Absolutely. So nicely done. I don't think this would be the kind of shot that would do well in competition, but certainly very beautiful to look at.
That's wonderful, Jerry. Let me try to share that a bit in Spanish. Nos habla de esta fotografía de Eliud que de entrada es una foto que se ve así como de cuento de hadas, muy bonita, pero creo que ha sido un tema recurrente en los comentarios de Jerry, es el hecho de que tiene que haber congruencia entre lo que está sucediendo, y más si hay algo de fotomanipulación con las expresiones de los novios, ¿no? O del sujeto. Como la primera foto de la chica que está en la ola, que está muy bien hecho todo el trabajo de Photoshop, casi parece que sí estuviera ahí, pero su expresión no es la de alguien que está y le acaba de pegar una ola, no es esa expresión divertida. Y aquí habla Jerry del cielo lleno de estas linternas bellísimas que dan este reflejo, y que parece que fuese de verdad, ¿no? Que el cielo estuviera reflejando. Pero dice Jerry que a la hora de estar viendo, analizando la foto, toda la gente en las mesas no está haciendo nada, están ahí platicando. Los novios también están muy pasivos en el centro de la imagen, y no hay esa interacción de que dicen, wow, qué increíble se está viendo el cielo con las linternas. Entonces, él está buscando esa congruencia. No nada más basta hacer una foto increíble, bien lograda, que el Photoshop y todo esté bien, sino hay que buscar esa congruencia en expresiones. En cuestión, la pose de los novios están un poquito muy tiesos, a diferencia de lo que estábamos hablando de la foto de Gina con la rodilla del novio doblada. Entonces están un poquito tiesos, que una pose un poquito más, que hubiera más interacción, que está bien la luz por detrás, que eso es algo que se usa mucho, pero que está muy bien lograda aquí, pero que hubiera un poco más de interacción entre los novios. Que aparte de eso, la foto, que es una foto bella, sí lo es, que le recomendaría a sus clientes imprimirla grande y colgarla en su casa, en el álbum, demás, definitivamente. Tal vez para competencia tendría esas fallas si los jueces se pusieran un poquito más analíticos y tratar de que todo congenie en la foto. Es difícil, pero bueno, esas son todas las cosas que están pensando los jueces. Nos vamos con esta que sigue de Shiloh, que también ya por ahí lo vi.
Okay, beautiful. I love this photograph. It's very, very visually strong and very dynamic. And I'm assuming, obviously, this couple are either both pilots or both in that industry. But I love the fact that it's very symmetrical, and you've got the repeating shapes. So obviously, you've got the arms holding the wings. You've got the propeller, and then, of course, you've got excuse me. And then you've got the couple sort of holding hands and about to kiss. A couple of things here. I feel like I love the almost kiss concept. I don't know if it works here. Like, they're both puckering up, and it just doesn't give me that warm and fuzzy feeling that I'm hoping for. I feel like also, here's another thing. When you're about to kiss someone, you very rarely look at someone's eyes. So I think that the more I look at this, I'm trying to understand why it gives me that awkward feeling when it comes to the kiss. So when you feel like a kiss is imminent and about to happen, you'd be looking at each other's lips, and also you'd be tilted a little bit more. Now, it's clever that the nose of the guy here actually forms that little puzzle just underneath the rim of her hat. But I would like their eyes to be looking in the lips, less puckering up, and maybe a little bit of a tilt of a head to make it look more realistic. And as I said before, I do believe that a kiss has a feminine sensibility. So if her top of her head was tilted towards the camera, I think that would be good. And to be honest, even if they kissed properly and they connected, and if the hat covered the kiss, it sort of reminds me of, movies from the 50s and 60s where that often happened, where you would get back then even kissing was taboo on camera, and then they would often hide and disguise the kiss with the rim of a hat. So I think that, just everything else is beautiful. I love the reflection of the nose of the front of the airplane there. I think that's really, really cool. And there's a little bit of dodging and burning on the face of the bride that we could have disguised a little bit better. But the kiss for me is the important one that perhaps we could have done a bit better.
Fantastic. Shiloh, una foto que de entrada tiene mucho impacto, muy interesante y bueno, ya nos dimos cuenta que Jerry se va muy en lo que son las poses, en lo que le hace sentir. Eso es lo que él busca como cuando está analizando fotografías. Bien lograda y todo, pero en cuestión del beso, eso es algo que dice que ve y algo no le termina de cuajar en esta fotografía y dice que es porque cuando nos estamos a punto de darle un beso a alguien, no nos vemos a los ojos, o sea, no estás viendo a los ojos de la persona que vas a besar, cierras los ojos o ves hacia su boca. Entonces, esto de que se estén viendo ellos en los ojos a punto de besarse, se ve muy posado y no se ve natural. Ahora va de vuelta a lo que dice del beso que es más femenino y que a él le gusta ver más la frente de la chica hacia la cámara. Ese ángulo del cuello hacia la cámara. Entonces, ese es un muy buen punto. Él dice que para el estilo de foto que está viendo, que él lo hace pensar en los 60, donde era un poco de tabú el besarse en público y más en cámara. Entonces, se le hace que se le podría ver interesante donde la novia estuviera con la cabeza hacia la cámara y tapándose la cara y actualmente darse el beso y taparse un poquito con el sombrero, esta interacción. Pero en general, muy bien lograda. Esa es nada más esa conexión de que parece que está posada y no. Dieron un tip, eso no lo dijo Jerry, pero lo había escuchado antes, es de que decirles, dense un beso a la de 3 y que cuando le dices 1, 2, cuando los ves que ya a punto están de darse el beso, es cuando le tomas el clic, en lugar de que te detengan la pose. Y eso es creo que lo que está refiriendo el que están como que la pose detenida. Y aparte de eso, en cuestión técnica, nada más que le trabajes un poquito el rostro de ella, que no, el dodge and burn no concuerda, pero nada más eso. Aparte de eso, Jerry le encantó. Y bueno, nos vamos a seguir porque tenemos muchas fotos, entonces vamos con la que sigue. Well, on to our next one. Try and move along, Jerry.
No problem at all. I love this image. Very, very strong, very dynamic. It's a very tough one to get right because you've got little pockets of light, and I think the photographer chose well to at least get the light right on her face, which is really beautiful. Love her curves. I feel that the groom there, I don't know, it feels very dramatic. I think this would be stronger with her on her own. Would I have got him in the shot as well? Of course, I would do that as well. Arguably, I just feel that it's quite dramatic. I think we could have maybe turned him around, hugged the bride, turned his face into her, and then we could have kept that sort of glow. Also, so again, it's very dynamic, very, very strong, and I think many of us would wish we had a location like this. the post-production, you can see a little bit of a glow on the front side of his pants, and it's a little bit distracting, but look, very strong, beautiful for the album. I think this would be more effective with the bride on her own, especially for competition, but very nice.
Fantastic. Félix, una foto espectacular, con mucho impacto, muy dinámica. Nos dice Jerry que a él le encantaría, y que seguro que muchos de nosotros, tener una locación así, que es un lugar muy difícil de fotografiar por las luces y las sombras, pero que posicionaste a la novia en el lugar correcto, que tiene una buena luz en su cara, y que pues, escogiste bien la luz para ella. El novio no le acaba de concordar a Jerry, no le encanta. Él dice que es más, hubiera puesto a la novia sola en esta locación, y si hubiera incluido al novio, lo hubiera puesto volteando hacia ella, abrazándola, para que los dos tuvieran esa misma iluminación. Pero muy, muy fuerte, muy buena, muy dinámica, muy buena foto. Nuevamente, hablando del para competencia, tal vez dice que tal vez eso podría debilitar esta foto, pero grandiosa foto. Vámonos con la que sigue. All right. Next one.
Okay. I love this photograph. When I saw the photographs that I was critiquing, to be honest, all of them are so strong and so dynamic. So it's really beautiful. This one really stood out. The fact that, you know, we've got this little building. Your exposure is beautiful for twilight. And then you've got that cinematic combination of that bluey teal with the amber is very cinematic. We see it in movies all the time. And it looks like you either had some kind of continuous light or a flash, and you created the light that gave them the silhouette, I think is beautiful. The fact that you have a gap between their faces is very important. Don't forget that when you cannot see the faces, the posing has to be more pronounced. In this case, we don't see anything. That's a silhouette. So at least we see shapes. So most people would get this wrong by getting them to kiss, and then that would be an issue. So I think that the negative space, the texture within the trees, that little highlight that brings your attention, I think this is very, very strong, very powerful, and I'm sure it would do well in competition, at least in my opinion.
Fantastic. Marcos, muchas felicidades. Dice Jerry que cuando estaba analizando las fotos que le iba a retroalimentar hoy, que esta definitivamente fue una de las que los hizo parar y decir, a ver, espérame, muy, muy bien lograda, le hizo sentir algo cinematográfico. La luz para el atardecer, el crepúsculo, maravillosa, y la luz que ilumina a estos personajes, a la pareja, muy buena. Que lo hiciste muy bien. Cuando hay que tomar en cuenta, eso es como una regla igual para todos, es de que cuando estamos teniendo gente en las sombras, ¿no? Los novios, es importante dejar esta separación entre los rostros y que no se besen. La mayoría de la gente la hubiera hecho mal o de la manera incorrecta porque estarían besando, entonces se vuelve como un blob oscuro ahí nada más y no se alcanzan a ver las siluetas. Tú, al haber dejado esa pequeña separación entre ellos, logras que podamos ver las siluetas de dónde empieza él y dónde empieza ella y demás. Entonces lo hiciste muy bien hecho. Jerry no le ve un solo pero, le cantó y dice que cree que le podría ir muy bien en competencia fotográfica. Así que felicidades, Marcos. Vamos con todo. All right.
Yeah, very beautiful. I love the way she's playing with the dress, and it's giving us the shape of a love heart, which I think is really pretty. The expression for me, there's something missing. So, you know, with this kind of thing, you can get so much expression from a bride closing her eyes. And now you might say, well, how would we do that? Well, even just a little bit of brow pressure, that little hint of tension in the eyes, that passionate sort of feeling. So, you know, sometimes we do things like this, it's more for an effect, but then we say, well, how do we add more emotion? For example, if if her body was just pushed one way or the other, you add a little bit of movement. If we add, again, that little bit of brow pressure in between her eyes, that sort of passionate feeling, that would have been really good. High degree of difficulty. I don't know whether this has been massaged and liquefied in Photoshop to form the love heart, or is done in camera. If it was done in camera, fantastic. And overall, the post-production is decent. I find that we've got little magenta fringes in the shadows and basically on her dress. So I would just be careful of that in post-production. Beautiful for the bride, certainly an amazing effect with the veil and a very high degree of difficulty. So well done.
Fantastic. Miguel Ángel, es una foto muy interesante, y bueno, detalles que podrías mejorar es cuando ya logras este efecto con el velo, no sabes si lograste el corazón, se logró solito o lo hiciste en postproducción, pero de ambas maneras te quedó muy, muy bien. ¿Qué podemos mejorar? La expresión, ¿no? Jerry está buscando mucho expresiones en los sujetos, esa conexión, y ella se ve muy relajada. Tal vez nada más la tensión, nada más en las cejas, frunce un poquito, esa tensión de emoción, de ansiedad, lo que sea, que no sea tan pasiva la expresión de la novia, hubiera sido que lo ha hecho mejor. Luego, otro detalle es los colores, el tono, se ve muy magenta la fotografía, y eso sí, yo creo que es importante recordar, las novias se gastan de blanco, quieren que su vestido sea blanco, hay que cuidar ese balance de blancos y que no se vea magenta, pero en general una foto muy, muy agradable. Esos son los únicos dos detallitos que te dice que podrían hacerla todavía mejor. Okay. How about this one?
Okay, very, very strong, very dynamic. I have seen this location before. I'm not too sure where I've seen it, but I think I've seen it entered into competition as well. Now, similar to what I said before, when you don't see the faces, you're relying on a bit more of an enhanced expression. So think of it like if a couple are far away, the expression, or what you're not getting in the face, you need to get in the body to give you a bit of movement. Now, I feel, although this is beautifully retouched, I think that the beautiful glow happening behind them and all that kind of stuff is beautiful. I feel that the veil blowing doesn't make sense. I think it's become a bit of a cliche that every bride in the world has wind following her. They're indoors, so I don't think that it makes sense. So I think that we've got to pick and choose our battles. In other words, if it's outdoor, you're on the beach or whatever, and you want to play with the veil and it to blow, do it sort of when it makes sense and it's real. Otherwise, they're so static and the wind is blowing, and obviously they're indoors, that just wouldn't have happened. So it almost takes the magic away a little bit. Also, our eyes read from left to right, and in most English-speaking countries, so from top left to bottom right visually. So if we were to grab this image and flip it 180 degrees horizontally, then the dress would flow naturally where our eyes go. So I think that's a really important one. The light that's bouncing off. Now, I'm assuming that there's basically either an assistant, or maybe it's on a light stand or a monopod, whatever. The flash behind them, whether it's bouncing off the wall or bouncing on the bride and bouncing back on the wall, it's creating that very, very, very strong highlight behind them. And then, of course, we're losing a little bit of detail in that dress behind. So sometimes in this particular situation, less is more. So just be careful on your flash power. And the ray of light, I feel like it was done in post-production. I think that that's okay. I think it's done well and not overdone. But the balance of exposure, I think, is very clever. And the fact that it's symmetrical is really beautiful too.
Fantastic. Ramiro, muchas felicidades. Esta es una foto muy interesante. Dice Jerry que él siente que esa locación ya la ha visto antes. Habla mucho de que cuando tenemos al novio y a la novia tan lejos, hay que tratar de que como no podemos ver sus rostros, que esa conexión y expresión la tengamos en sus cuerpos. Aquí están un poquito tiesos, dice Jerry, un poquito eso, y toda la imagen en general, ¿no? Es muy simétrica, muy estática, y que dice que se ha vuelto un poco de un cliché esto de que el velo y a las novias el viento las acompaña durante toda su trayectoria. Entonces, esto de que el velo salga volando funciona si la foto es afuera, pero en esta situación donde todo está estático, todo está tan simétrico, el velo ahí flotando como que no viene ni al caso. También nos habla de que hay que recordar que leemos las fotos de la misma manera en que leemos un libro, de la parte de arriba del lado izquierdo hacia la derecha. Entonces, él sugiere que juegues con invertirle un espejo a tu foto para que el velo fluya, ya que lo tenemos flotando, que fluya en la dirección en que estaríamos leyendo. Eso es de esas cosas que siempre todos los jueces nos dicen: juega con el recorte, juega con invertir la foto y a ver si te gusta. A veces lo haces y dices, no me funcionó, ¿no? Y la regresas, pero creo que es un buen punto. Nos habla de la luz que está detrás de los novios, que está, dice, no sabe si fue un tripié o qué fue, pero está un poco fuerte, está quemando el vestido de la novia, entonces que en estas ocasiones a veces es un poquito, un poco menos es mejor, y ese extra luz, esos flares que tienen, cree que los pusiste después, pero dice que los lograste muy bien, que se ven muy, muy padres. Entonces, aquí esas son las comentarios, sugerencias de esta fotografía, y nos vamos con la que sigue. Esta de Andrés Mondragón. All right.
Okay.
Jerry.
Yeah, I really appreciate this image. It's almost like I've got no information, but in this case, I just I've got a really good feeling about it, and I can't even tell you why. I think it's the obscurity. Like, you know how we've seen other ones where like the image doesn't sort of make sense, but we're just trying for an editorial feel. It's not really meant to be romantic or anything like that. The connection of the groom to the bride, I think, is really cool, but the obscurity of where they're standing and the graphic nature of it, even the fact that the bride's not even posing. It's like a moment between a moment. I like it. There's sometimes I can't even tell you why. It's just the negative space, that little bit of black. And even this one, like, we see the proportion, the bride looks a lot bigger than the groom. Like with the previous image that we saw, it was a problem. In this case, it doesn't bother me because they're both cut off. So for me, this is just like a moment between a moment. The negative space lends itself to the mystery, which is what I appreciate. So yeah, this breaks a lot of rules, but I really enjoy it.
It works. Yeah. So you wouldn't touch anything?
No, I mean, you know, would I do something with the bride's? Maybe. Would I want a little bit of less obscurity with the way she's holding her veil and her arm? Maybe. Like, it'd be nice if she was just holding her dress so I could see, you know, a triangular gap between her arm and her body, whatever. But even the fact that it's between a moment and it's not too perfect, I think this is one of the times where I'm like, you know what, it's sort of, again, it breaks a few rules. And even though that maybe it would have been more effective with maybe something a bit more finessed with her, maybe it's the imperfection of what she's doing with her dress adds to the obscurity of it. So I can't really tell you why I enjoy it. I just do.
Fantastic. And that's also a plus. Andrés, ya vi que andas por ahí, saludos. Y sí, dice Jerry que esta tiene impacto, se ve que es un momento entre momentos, que no sabe explicarles por qué, que es esas fotos raras que funciona. Por ejemplo, la foto que vimos hace ratito donde el novio estaba recortado, dice que aquí también, pero aquí funciona, tal vez porque él está más alto que ella, pero también él dice que porque ella también está recortada, entonces que eso ayuda a balancearlo, que le digo, ¿no le cambiarías nada? Y me dice, pues no, porque me gusta la imperfección del momento. Dice, tal vez me hubiera gustado verle en la mano, cómo estaba deteniendo su vestido, algo así, pero entonces ya hubiera sido una toma posada, y aquí me gusta que fue como un momento cándido, funciona, y no, dice que no le cambiaría nada, que rompe muchas reglas, pero que las rompe de tal manera que funciona. Así que bien hecho, Andrés. Vamos con todo con esta. Felicidades. Fantastic. Y nos vamos con esta de Charbel.
Yeah, and just quickly, that kind of photograph in competition, there are some judges that would judge it very, very high and very, very low. I think there's no in between with that one. It's
the previous one, right?
Yes, yes.
Ya, Andrés, y dice que ese es el tipo de foto, la tuya, que sería que en competencia o le iría súper bien y le pondría una calificación muy alta, o la tumbarían con una calificación. Es de que o te encanta o no. Esa es la belleza de esta foto. No hay tonos grises. Así que felicidades. A mí también me enloquece. Me la apostaría por ella. Ok, nos vamos con la de Charbel.
Okay, so I love the contrast of the movement of the train and of course the static nature of the couple. I think it's very beautiful. A couple of things. We said earlier today, a couple of times already, that when you get a couple kissing, that in my humble opinion, the nose of the bride should be on the outside. Now, that would have actually been effective for a couple of reasons. So first, it is a feminine sensibility, and if he turned his head, the top of his head away from the camera, and her nose is on the outside, as she brings her chin up, that light that's falling on her face would have fallen completely on her face. Also, the way I see posing is that every part of the body should amplify what you're trying to say. They're kissing. It's romantic. Would I be holding my jacket if I was kissing my bride? I'd be holding her with both hands. So I know that sometimes we want a difference. Like if you wanted to do a shot with a guy with his jacket around his shoulder, do a walking shot. It's not meant to be completely romantic because you're walking. As far as this is concerned, their hands are too straight. You see how you might have beautiful curves of the bride, but when the arms and the hands are straight, it looks static. And when it looks static, then there's going to be an issue with that flow and that beautiful energy that you're trying to create with the kiss there as well. So put his jacket on, hold with both hands, put her nose on the outside, shoot slightly over the shoulder of the groom so we see more of the kiss. And that's it. But no, nice, certainly dynamic, very strong, and I'm sure beautiful for their wall and their album.
Charbel, felicidades, una foto muy dinámica, muy fuerte. Ya Jerry tiene esta sensibilidad de los detalles, en particular en la pose. Dice que a él le gusta que la pose vaya con lo que está tratando de transmitir en su foto, ¿no? Entonces, una foto de un novio que tiene el saco colgado es una pose, tiene que ser una pose donde están caminando, más casual. Si es una pose donde se están besando, lo normal es que el novio esté con las dos manos agarrando a la novia, no una mano en agarrando un saco. No concuerda con el sentimiento que quieres compartir. Hablando de lo que dijo del beso, la nariz de la novia enfrente del novio ayuda más a que se vea más femenina el beso, y aquí le hubiera ayudado mucho a la iluminación. Claudia nos dice que hay que practicar los besos. Yo creo que sí, hay que practicar estos besos y fotografiarlos. Y las manos también están muy tiesas. Acuérdense, si tienen una coyuntura, que la doblen la rodilla, aunque no se les vea, que doblen la rodilla, doblen los codos y para hacer esta conexión y este flujo. Pero muy buena foto, definitivamente cree que algo que podrían colgar en su pared, pero esos detallitos son los que cree que los jueces te pueden llegar a bajar puntuación. ¿Ok? Nos vamos con la que sigue.
Okay, very tough conditions to photograph in, obviously with high winds and all that stuff. I like where you've placed them. I think that maybe getting them in the frame a little bit more to the right, I think would be even more effective, because it's not quite centered, it's not quite third. A little bit to their right would be great. For me personally, it may be just a personal bias, but when I see anything romantic, when it comes to foreheads touching or kissing or whatever, I feel like the bride's hands, for example, are wasted holding the flowers. So when you talk about my little puppy here. When you talk about being romantic, would it be more effective that we basically get the bride holding the groom's face? I think that would be really, really good. So take the flowers away, get her holding his hands or on his chest or something like that. Probably more of a problem here than that is the legs. The groom's legs are very straight and very static. There's no energy shifting to the woman that he loves. So most of us know about pointing the toe of the bride, bending the knee and all that kind of thing. But with this, if you just put all his weight on his back leg and just slightly bend his knee, think of it like his leg is forming an arrow pointing, like I said before, to the woman that he loves. Now, because we can see her legs exposed, and even if we couldn't, it's important that we bend her knee that's closest to the camera. And because we can see her feet, try to form a little gap between her ankle and the back of her foot. So in other words, her left toe comes behind her right foot, and then we see a little gap of air between her knee and her right leg, and then a gap between her left foot and that. In other words, the more separation that we see in body parts, the more we understand what that shape is, and that curve is important. Also, if we got rid of the flowers, her left hand would be on his arm, and then she'd bring her elbow back, and then I would see a gap of air between her elbow and her body. And as we said before, whenever you're getting a kiss or foreheads touching, just bring the bride's face outwards a little bit. She just turned her face to the left, it'd still be a profile, but the light would be better, and you'd see a little hint more of her face.
Fantastic. Wow, these are amazing tips. Chicos, bueno, Eric, esta fotografía le gustó, la locación muy, muy hermosa. Nos habla, ahorita José está haciendo el zoom, de la pose, muy importante. Nos está dando unas lecciones de pose muy buenas. Las piernas del novio están muy tiesas, muy estáticas. Dice que no es congruente para un novio que está aquí queriendo besar a su novia, que siempre le sugiere que doble una rodilla casi para crear como una flecha apuntando hacia la mujer que ama. En cuestión, ella dice que sí, que es muy importante el ramo, pero que cuando está besando a su novio es mejor que el ramo, no sé, tal vez yo diría ponerlo en el suelo y que ella sus dos manos las esté usando para tocarlo a él, tal vez la mano que está más lejos tocando su rostro, la mano que está deteniendo el ramo podría estar tomando el brazo de él, y esto haría que doblara el brazo y que creara esa separación entre su cintura y su brazo, dándole ya más forma, más movimiento. Nos habla de que el pie de la novia también, doblar un poquito la rodilla, levantar la planta del pie y desfasarlos. Dice que cuando tenemos partes del cuerpo que hay que separarlas y dar ese espacio entre ellas para que podamos ver qué partes qué, ¿no? Dónde empieza una pierna, dónde termina la otra, y estos movimientos. Creo que nos está dando tips geniales para que nuestras fotos no se vean tan estáticas y tengan más conexión. Un último tip de esta foto es, aunque se estén besando, aunque se estén tocando, siempre el rostro de la mujer que esté un poquito más hacia la cámara, para que se vea un poco más de su cara de ella y podamos, haya esa conexión y se vea mejor la toma. Perfecto. Y nos vamos con la que sigue.
Okay, I love this image. It's very beautiful. It's very, very soft. I love the lighting on her. It's sensual without being sexual, and I think that's where some photographers who do boudoir maybe go a little bit too far. This one is just very soft and delicate and very pretty. I like the fact that you've got her to lean on her thigh so that we don't show too much of the bust. The problem is we've probably gone a little bit too far, so her bust looks very, very flat. And it might be. All I would say is start by covering up the bust and then lean her back up a little bit so that you just get a little bit more curve. and just obviously without exposing the nipple. I think that would be important. The only thing that I would do differently in this photograph is her left hand. The problem is when you look at this closely, her left thumb is coming out of her mouth. It looks a little bit weird. So at the end of the day, when in doubt, go without. If you think there is a problem with a body part or something in a photograph, there probably is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be questioning it. So my advice would be to either just extend the arm underneath the veil like you've done with the right arm. This could also be on the back of the neck so that you're basically seeing the ring. And a couple of suggestions like that. But yeah, just be careful of distraction. So that left hand all the way away, but the negative space, the surrounding in white, the beautiful, very tasteful version of this, I think, is extremely, extremely well done.
Fantastic. Lili, ya vi que andas por ahí. Felicidades. Esta es una fotografía que dice Jerry que es muy sensual sin ser sexual. Creo que, y estoy de acuerdo con él, que muy a menudo se cruza esa línea y se pierde esa sensualidad en una foto de desnudo de mujer y se vuelve un poco grotesca y sexual y ya no tiene esa finura. Tú lo lograste perfectamente bien con el velo, la pose. Le gusta cómo estás ocultando el busto con la pierna. Dice que tal vez se te pasó un poquitito de nada la mano porque está apachurrando el busto y sería bueno ver un poquito más de forma sin ver el pezón, pero que bien logrado por ahí. En cuestión de la mano, ese es el pero que le pone más grande a tu foto, porque parece que su dedo gordo le está saliendo de la boca. Entonces, ahí él hubiera tratado de extender un poquito el brazo, un poco como lo tienes en la otra, o incluso que se estuviera tomando el cuello por detrás y entonces verías más el anillo. Pero en general, hermosa tu foto. Felicidades, muy, muy dulce, la verdad, a mí también me enloqueció. Felicidades. Okay.
A quick question. Melissa translated it for me from Zoila. It says, how important are the details of the blur of the subway car, so the train of a couple of shots ago?
Okay.
Because you can tell it was done in post-production since a moving subway car shouldn't have open doors. Would those details go unnoticed by the judges? Do you think they would only focus on the subjects?
Yes, so Josué, ¿puedes regresar a la foto de Charbel del vagón del tren? Porque Melissa nos está ayudando con las traducciones y las preguntas para Jerry, así que muchas gracias por las preguntas, and thank you, Melissa, for helping us out with that.
Okay, so my answer to that question is, for me, I don't look at that and think that's fake. I mean, it could have been open doors. It could have been done in post-production. I'm not too sure. But for me, because of the other problems in this photograph, this is a kind of photograph that is nice for the album, nice for the wall, whatever, but probably not good for competition. Does that make sense? So yeah. I think it's a bread and butter photograph, good for the couple, not for now. Yes, I think that if someone was to look at that and maybe think, wait a second, why is the door opening? I mean, it could have been moving, and maybe that's an optical illusion, or it could, in fact, like you suggested, could have been done in post-production. Some people who are very digitally, proficient in like very computer and Photoshop literate, they might look at that. Someone like me might look at more the posing and the lighting. So it just depends on the judges. And that's why you have usually 5 judges, because collectively you make a decision. This is good, but again, the reason why I didn't really address that, it didn't really bother me. It was just a fun effect to accompany the image.
Fantastic. Yeah, and Charbel is saying that the train was moving when he shot the shot. Yeah. So it was
perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you for helping Zoila out as well, because I think that's a very good answer. That different judges. We've been doing this for 2.5 months, and you focus more on the image being congruent. The posing being congruent with what's happening. It might look good, but it just doesn't match. So I like that you're focusing on that aspect. Entonces fue muy buena respuesta de Jerry a Zoila, de que preguntaba ella si los jueces iban a enfocar en que si el tren estaba moviéndose o no, o fue postproducción o no. Y Jerry dice, bueno, yo cuando estoy calificando me enfoco en las emociones, en la conexión, en que sea congruente. Él se fija más en la pose, ¿no? Pero hay jueces que son expertos en Photoshop y se van a fijar más en la postproducción, en la edición, ¿no? Entonces, por eso normalmente los concursos tienen 5 jueces, nosotros también tenemos muchos ojos viéndolo para ver todos los detalles. Entonces, un juez va a enfocar en una y otro en otra. Pero buenas preguntas. Si tienen alguna otra, ahora es cuando, porque ya estamos llegando al final. Creo que nos faltan 2 fotos más, así que si tienen más preguntas para Jerry para cerrar fuerte, adelante. All right, Jerry, on to this next one. I think we're almost close to the end.
Mm-hmm. I love this image. I think that the color palette is exquisite. The pastel colors of the bathroom, the dress, the lighting. I'm not 100% convinced that was the light that illuminated the bride, but I think that the photographer's done a good job. Pardon me. So either they've taken advantage of that light or they've disguised another light with it. Either way, I really, really enjoy it. I love the fact that we can see the face on that glass on the right-hand side. So it's giving us like a parallel, like it's almost sandwiching the bride's face here, and then you've got that mural or whatever it is in the glass. I think this, to be honest, would be more effective if it was flipped 180 degrees. I think that's really important. Because there's no writing in the photograph, you wouldn't tell that it's been done. The posing is beautiful. The hands are done very, very well. There's something a little bit weird, and I apologize to the photographer, and I don't think it's the photographer's fault. It's a wide-angle lens. Her body looks disproportionate. Her upper body looks disproportionate to the rest of her dress. She looks tiny, and then the dress goes big, which we know happens in dresses, but something doesn't feel right. I don't know what it is. And another judge may not even look at it and have any problem with it. For me, just at a glance, her body just doesn't match the rest of her dress. So I don't really know what I would do there in that case, because it just could be your perspective or your wide angle lens. All I know though is I think you've made something out of nothing here. I think many photographers would struggle to know what to do, but you've got a bathtub and a shower, but it looks amazing. So you've taken advantage of some beautiful light. The pastel colors are in harmony. And again, the mirroring of the two faces of the mural and the bride, I think are exceptional. So very nicely done.
Yeah. Do you feel something like it's like falling? Like I feel like the bathtub is like falling to the right-hand side, maybe kind of trying to align some lines there?
Well, I think if that was perfectly straight, I think it wouldn't. It's tough because I don't know if it would make perfect sense if that was straightened, because you've got such a wide angle lens and you're not parallel to that. So even though that you could grab it in Photoshop and skew it and make it straight, would that look, it would look technically correct, but it may not actually be correct in a sense that, yeah, with a wide angle lens and standing to the right-hand side of all these lines, it may not work, or it may be perfect. I don't really know. So for me, that didn't worry me too much, because really the distance, like the shower lines, vertical lines are parallel.
Yeah.
The wall mural is pretty much parallel to the edge of the frame. If you skewed the bottom, what would that do? Yeah, that might help. Yeah, I don't know. Something about the bride's body being tiny and everything being bigger, something doesn't feel right, but that could just be her. So, we don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Ramiro, una imagen muy interesante, definitivamente está en el baño con la tina y demás. A Jerry le gustó la iluminación, su pose muy femenina, como semejanza de ella en el reflejo con el rostro, y parece como que se está reflejando ella, muy bien hecho. Creo que que el pero más grande que le pone Jerry a tu foto es que siente que tal vez es por el lente, ella se ve tan fuera de proporción con su vestido, ¿no? De la cintura para arriba se ve chiquititita y de la cintura para abajo se ve ese vestido gigantesco. Dice que tal vez es porque así es ella y así estaba su vestido o por la distorsión del lente, que tal vez te sugiere como que lo analices y lo veas. Yo le pregunté acerca de la tina, siento que la tina se ve como que está caída y que sí tal vez valdría la pena enderezarla un poquito. También por el lente, dice él que no sabe, algo no le concuerda ahí, que podría funcionarte, es jugar y nada más esos pequeños detalles que menciona él y yo, a ver si terminan de hacerla que fluya, pero se me hace una toma espectacular en un lugar no muy poco común, así que felicidades. And I think we're the last one. Josué, esa ya es la última, ¿nos dices? We had one last entry, if you don't mind, Jerry, and we promise we'll let you go.
No, of course, no problem.
Perfecto, esa es la última de Jorge Lara.
Okay, so very, very strong composition here, obviously with this location, whether it's a house or a temple or whatever it may be. It's a tough one. This is a tough angle, because that angle certainly gives it strength and it gives it grandeur. The problem is that whenever you have subject matter that is either standing straight or leaning away and you're down low with a wide angle lens, it can be a problem. So can you come to my camera for a second?
A ver, José, ¿podemos ver a Jerry? Ajá.
Okay, so let's say, you're the photographer here, okay? And then you have subject matter here. And if you're the photographer here with a wide angle lens, and either your subject matter is standing straight, or in this case, it feels like she's almost leaning back, then the illusion is that this is happening. It feels like you're doing this. So here's what has to happen. If your camera is low, your subject matter has to lean forward to correct the perspective. Otherwise, there's going to be this feeling. So in this case, her upper body should be leaning way, way, way towards the camera, turning her body a little bit more. And the way she would do that is if she turns her body, points her toes towards the camera, slides the heel back, and then now leans her upper body towards the camera. In real life, if you were looking at her, it would look weird, but you're correcting the perspective and then you're disguising the fact that she's leaning forward. And then sometimes if she does lean forward and it looks awkward on the bottom, you just cut the legs out, and then that way you can get a beautiful sky and so on. All right, so let's go translate that and then go back to it, and then I can finish.
Okay. Entonces nos habla otro tema muy interesante es cuando estamos tomando una fotografía en este ángulo con el tipo de lente que usó Jorge, hace que parezca que está la novia en el ángulo que está y parece que se está casi tirando ella hacia atrás. Entonces, cuando estamos tomando con un ángulo, un gran angular, y en este ángulo hay que pedirle a nuestro sujeto que se incline hacia la cámara. Se va a ver muy raro en la vida real, pero con el lente y todo se va a corregir esta distorsión de perspectiva y va a quedar mejor. ¿Ok?
All right, let's go full bleed. All right, perfect. Okay, so do you see her right hand on the rail there? It's quite soft and it's quite delicate. What I would have loved to have seen is her slide her elbow back a little bit so her wrist is bending over the rail. So that's one thing. If you look at her left hand, what's happening is that she's pointing her hand towards the camera. We call that foreshortening. We're shortening the length of the arm. And then if you look at her thumb coming across the rail and then her fingers, you can only really see the length of one finger. So it almost looks like a claw and it looks a bit unflattering. So my suggestion is put the hands down and then sort of slide them down very, very gently and delicately. And then also, it's tough with the lighting situation because you've got not much room to play, because if you have the lighting left or right, the structure would cause a shadow on her. Now, either you get a light on a monopod, bring it up really high, and then you got a bit of direction, or if you did what you did here, The problem is she's turning her face so far left that it's broad lighting her. That's okay. In this case, I feel like a little bit of shadow or seeing a bit more of her face would help. Whenever a nose, from a perspective, a nose cuts into the eye, it can be problematic. So I think that you were seduced by the location, and the location here just made it difficult for you to be refined. So nicely done under the circumstances, but a few refinements there with the posing and the lighting, I think, would have been more effective.
Fantastic. And I think that's another good point that you just shared, is sometimes the fact that it's a wonderful location doesn't mean that it's going to work to make it a wonderful photograph, because it might add all these extra challenges. So let me just do a quick translation of that. Jorge nos habla de entrada, me voy de atrás para adelante, nos habla Jerry de que te sedujo la locación, pero hay veces que podemos tener una locación maravillosa, pero esa locación nos va a traer problemas adicionales. Un poquito también como la locación hermosa de Félix, pero con las luces y las sombras, ¿no? Entonces aquí no ayuda por el ángulo en que tuviste que retratar a la novia. Nos habla nuevamente de las manos, muy, muy importantes. Las manos, buena pose de las manos muestra el nivel técnico de cómo manejar a sus sujetos de los fotógrafos. Entonces vemos la primera mano de su lado derecho está bastante bien. Le hubiera gustado un poquito caída para que tuviera un poco de flexión en la muñeca, pero en general bien. El problema es la otra. En el ángulo en que está se ve el brazo muy corto, el dedo gordo separado y nada más se ve el dedo índice, entonces se ve casi como una garra. Entonces eso hubiera necesitado que los brazos estuvieran más cerca de ella y para no tener esta distorsión. Pero bueno, esos fueron los comentarios de esta foto para ti, Jorge. Muchas gracias a todos los valientes y chicos y chicas que enviaron sus fotos, que permitieron que todos aprendiéramos con los comentarios de Jerry. Muchas gracias por ser parte de esto. Gracias por estar participando en Ask Click. Jerry, thank you so much. We've definitely gone over time, but we enjoyed every second that we had you here. We've learned so much.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you so much. So let me finish off with saying a couple of things. So first of all, thank you for your trust, because I know it's very difficult to put your photographs up there to the world to see. So thank you for your respect and thank you for your trust. Also, I just want to say that, remember, competition, there's so many people that focus on competition, and that is your only, that's your measure of success. Trust me, I would much rather you be a successful business person than a multi-award winning genius that doesn't have any clients. So that's the second point. And also, all of these photographs are beautiful. They're saleable. They're gorgeous. It doesn't mean they're necessarily good for competition. So just know that what will win the hearts of your clients will win the hearts of the judges. I myself might shoot an entire wedding, and there's very solid shots in there, but there's nothing really in there that I feel like is worthy of competition. It doesn't make me a bad photographer. It's just that, usually you have to add that little extra element, whether it's originality or imagination in concept, execution, or technique. So it's important that we understand that this has its place, and everything that I said doesn't make me right. That's just my perspective, but you learn more from things you get wrong than what you get right. So again, thank you for your respect, and it's been a pleasure to share with you today.
Fantastic. Tell me those 4 things again. It was concept, technique, imagination.
So usually what gets rewarded well is something that either has originality or imagination, and in other words, being different, but it's very hard to be, but at the very least in concept, different idea, execution, or technique.
Fantastic. I love those points. Perfect. Let me share that. Dice Jerry que muchas gracias por la oportunidad, pero por tenerle la confianza de que pudiera retroalimentar sus fotografías y quiere que se den cuenta que tiene que haber un balance. El éxito no necesariamente es que te vaya bien en competencia, tienen que pensar que las fotos que les van a enloquecer a sus clientes no necesariamente son las fotos que les van a ir bien en competencia. Él dice que a veces hace una boda completita y que él sabe que de ahí no hay nada para competencia, que a sus clientes les va a encantar y que las va a poder vender bien, que si se trata de elegir, prefiere que sean unos fotógrafos exitosos que les va muy bien económicamente y les pagan muy bien, y no que sean unos fotógrafos exitosos porque ganan todos los premios habidos y por haber, pero que definitivamente se complementa el competir porque nos impulsa a buscar esa excelencia y nos habla de estos puntos que realmente son 5: imaginación, originalidad, concepto, ejecución y técnica. Y que si tenemos en mente eso, ayuda a que tengamos mejores fotografías. En competencia buscan mucho la originalidad. Piensen que los jueces están viendo miles de fotos, quieren ver algo diferente, pero ya que vieron algo diferente, quieren ver algo que está bien ejecutado, que tiene buena técnica. Entonces, eso que nos empuje nos va a hacer mejores fotógrafos para que luego en automático podamos crearle mejores imágenes a nuestros clientes. Así que muy buenos consejos. Jerry, thank you. Thank you. Wow. No wonder that everybody knows you and admires you. You've just giving us 2 hours of bucketfuls of nuggets of information and inspiration for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. And I hope to see you in person. The world is opening up and maybe we'll make a holiday out of it and maybe come and see you guys in person. It'd be great.
We would love to host you in Mexico. As soon as things start opening up more in Mexico, we'll definitely have to make something up. I know that everybody would welcome you here with open arms. You've been to Mexico before, and we love you down here. So, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. I thought I was going to meet you next week, but things happen. We'll have to make it happen again before too long.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Yes, fantastic. Please don't go away. I'm just going to close this up. We'll put you back in the lobby for a minute so I can just say goodbye properly out of there.
Problem. No
Okay,
worries.
chicos, bueno, con esto llegamos al final del bootcamp, al final de nuestra transmisión con Jerry Ghionis. La verdad es que me siento muy honrada de que haya aceptado mi invitación, pero aparte muy orgullosa de que vea estas fotos y que nos dé tan buenas retroalimentaciones, que nos diga que tenemos imágenes fantásticas, que definitivamente dice muy vendibles, no solamente para dársela al novio, y para colgarlas en la pared. Escuchen eso, para que sus novios las cuelguen en la pared. Entonces, creo que eso es fantástico. Y si además de aquí también sale alguna para representar a México y traerse una medalla, bueno, ese ya es la cereza en el pastel. Recuerden, tenemos hasta el día 10 de junio, ya 8 días quedan para recibir sus imágenes. Yo creo mucho en ustedes, por eso les dedico tanto tiempo, creo en el talento de México y estoy convencida que tenemos con qué ir para poner el nombre de México en alto en cuestión fotografía, traernos esas medallas y por fin ganarnos esa copa que tanto queremos, pero seguir haciendo comunidad, seguir aprendiendo juntos, creo que eso es lo más bonito de todo esto. Les mando besos, gracias a todos los que nos han estado viendo, Charbel, Zoila, mira, ahorita nada más estoy viendo aquí de rápido, Lili, y me voy a ir un poquito atrás a ver quién más anduvo por ahí, Andrés, Héctor, Miguel, o sea, todos los que estuvieron comentando, gracias por estar conectados, por estar apoyándonos y por estar compartiendo sus fotos. Me despido, día 10, no se les olvide, un beso enorme y hasta la próxima. Cuídense muchísimo.